Growing up on a farm was the best. I've always felt at peace here, surrounded by nature. Some of my favorite memories are paddling down the river with my dad and grandpa for kilometers on end. My name is Alexis Lema, and I'm from Sturgeon County, Alberta. I remember when winter used to feel like it lasted forever. When we were young, snow at Halloween was basically guaranteed. We would have to dress with layers upon layers to go trick-or-treating. The snow stuck around for many months, occasionally ruining our May-long weekend camping plans. My sister and I loved skiing in the mountains and building gigantic snow forts, one year even an igloo. The first time that I learned about climate change was in 4th grade. My teacher drew a big red line above the earth on the whiteboard with cartoon cars with little squiggles coming out of their exhaust pipes to describe the greenhouse gas effect. At 10 years old, I remember thinking about that picture a lot and what it all meant, because it didn't seem like anyone else was talking about it. It seemed like a big what if, or in a long time from now, it's normal to have heating and cooling. It was certainly more convenient to believe this story rather than the reality. I think that the tangible effects of climate change were hard to recognize in Canada for the average person. After all, we live in one of the coldest climates in the world, with -40 winters and snow covering our landscape for most of the year. Growing up in Alberta, climate change wasn't discussed. The oil industry is virtually a part of Alberta's identity. You don't have to look hard to find a "We Heart Oil and Gas" bumper sticker or hear politicians say, the oil field gives people jobs, grows our economy. It's how we get our Alberta advantage. Living in this position of privilege, reaping the benefits of the fossil fuel industry, and listening to the media talk about fossil fuels in a positive light, put climate change as a second thought for a long time. I remember becoming particularly invested in climate change after seeing Greta Thunberg at the Alberta Legislature building. For someone so young to take such a strong stance on this issue, it put into perspective the life-changing nature of climate change. Glancing into an office window of the Legislature building and seeing those trademark signs, "We love oil and gas." I remember feeling a great sense of panic and helplessness when I saw this, because I knew action was needed, but I didn't know how to act upon it yet. Then the COVID-19 pandemic hit. I was working as a registered nurse in an emergency department. It felt like pouring water from a massively leaking bucket. Our department easily became overwhelmed during the pandemic. This is when my perspective on climate change and health changed drastically. After being a part of the healthcare system as it happened, I became curious about global infectious disease spread due to a changing climate. If my department in a well-off country like Canada was struggling, I wondered how we could sustain ourselves with a much larger disaster, and how can we expect the entire world to do the same? And more importantly, what can we do to prevent this from happening? As a healthcare worker, I wanted to be far better prepared the next time an emergency like this happened. This spring in Alberta, we saw the effects of climate change right before our eyes. Wildfires have been raging with smoke and flooding, displacing thousands of people from multiple communities. It's distressing to wake up to bike to work and see the sky turn that dark, hazy orange, and it hurts my lungs to breathe. When I talk to my old neighbors, they describe their crops as stunted, maturing too fast, or anticipating swarms of grasshoppers. In my emergency room, I saw many patients with respiratory problems from the smoke this spring. Even during the heat dome in 2021, I remember how difficult it was to care for people working in the heat and the overcrowding of patients in our department with no AC. Knowing that these extreme weather events will increase as the planet warms, I feel a deep responsibility to address and advocate for climate change as a healthcare provider. Climate change directly affects the ability of my community to stay healthy, whether it's the air we breathe, the food we can access, or our physical safety. I've decided that knowledge is power. I'm committed to learning about upstream approaches by taking a master's degree in public health and specializing in global health. When I finish, I hope to become an advocate for climate change in my future public health role. By actively promoting climate change action in public health policy, even if I do not end up in a role with climate change in the title, I hope to make a difference by keeping the climate in mind with every decision I make. I spent a lot of time being afraid of climate change and feeling like it was too late. Still, I find that when I put my fears about climate change into action and gain knowledge, I feel more hopeful to be a part of the solution and in creating a better world for our future generations to live on.